I want to look at what boredom might actually be telling you and how that discomfort can lead to better focus, stronger creative flow, and more peace of mind. Welcome to Your Creative Mind. This show is all about tapping into your creativity and using it to build a life you love. You'll hear practical tools, inspiring stories, and conversations with artists, writers, innovators, and change makers who are doing the work, so you can too. Let's spark your imagination, focus your energy, and create with purpose. Ready? Let's go. Hello, and welcome to the Your Creative Mind podcast, the podcast where we explore how to think more clearly, feel more deeply, and create more powerfully. I'm your host, Izolda Trachtenberg. Have you ever said, "I'm bored," and then immediately reached for your phone or a snack or the very next task? I've done it too. But when I read this quote by Dr. Andrea Bonior, I hope I'm saying it right. I've never actually met her. I've just read the book. But here is the quote. "Boredom is discomfort with being fully present in the current moment." Oy, that stopped me in my tracks. I had to really stop and I had to think. We think we know what boredom is. We've all felt it. But what if we've misunderstood it completely? What if boredom isn't a lack of stimulation? But instead, what if it's a signal? What if it's a nudge from our deeper selves, from our subconscious selves? And this is what I want to look at today. I want to look at what boredom might actually be telling you and how that discomfort can lead to better focus, stronger creative flow, and more peace of mind. If you've been feeling scattered, stuck, or overstimulated, this might be the 5-minute shift that helps you reconnect with what matters most. So I invite you to sit with it with me together, because I want you to be able to recognize boredom for what it really is, how to name the discomfort it hides, and how learning to sit with it can dramatically improve your mindfulness, your creativity, and your overall well-being. Let's start with the classic understanding. Boredom is when there's nothing to do, nothing exciting going on, nothing grabbing your attention. But that's not quite true, is it? We live in a time when there's always something to do. We have a world of distractions in our pockets: books, video games, videos themselves, emails, messages, tons of scrolls of news or utter nonsense. So how is it that with all that stimulation, we can still feel bored? Because as Dr. Bonier's quote points out, boredom isn't just about the absence of stimulation. It's often about the presence of something we don't want to feel. Think about it. Have you ever had a quiet afternoon and instead of enjoying it, you found yourself pacing or opening the fridge or checking your phone without really knowing why? You say to yourself, "I'm bored," even when you have a dozen meaningful things you could be doing. That's not boredom. That's avoidance of silence, of your own thoughts, of whatever's waiting in that stillness. So when you feel bored, ask yourself, am I actually bored, or am I just uncomfortable with being where I am? Oh, that's such a mind trip, isn't it? Yikes. So what I want to talk about is, how do you recognize boredom and what might be going on underneath? I want to break it down a little. Boredom shows up in a bunch of really super sneaky ways. It's not always yawns or sighs. Sometimes it's hyperproductivity. Sometimes it's restlessness. Sometimes it's straight up escapism, right? Have you ever spent time just binging a show when you know you've got 1,000 things to do or 1,000 things you could be doing? Yeah, we've all done it. So here are a few signs that you might not be bored. Instead, you might be uncomfortable. 1, you start a creative task but immediately feel the urge to stop. Or you're surrounded by possibility, books, instrument, tools, but nothing feels appealing. You keep switching tabs, apps, or conversations, searching for something that sparks you, something that clicks. You finish your work, but you feel uneasy in the quiet afterward. I've had that happen after a long, grueling project comes to a close, even if I loved the project. When I directed my first play, I lived and breathed that play for months. And then when it was over, I got unaccountably depressed. It was just this, oh, holy crap, right? So that's one of those things that could happen. And so if you're saying, oh, I'm so bored, but the thought of focusing on anything feels overwhelming, you might be sitting in discomfort rather than boredom. So what's really going on in those moments? We can look at boredom as a mask that covers more complicated feelings. You might have grief over something unresolved. You might have fear that your work won't be good enough. You might have loneliness because you feel lonely and you don't want to acknowledge it. Or you might just be uncertain about what to do next. So when you notice these patterns, here's a simple shift that you can make. Instead of saying, I'm bored, try asking, what part of me doesn't want to be here right now? Because that's what, according to Dr. Bonior, that's what this is. So what part of you doesn't want to be here now? And this always brings me to Dan Millman, Way of the Peaceful Warrior, on my phone, and I might put a screenshot of it in the show notes because I think it's important. In the book Way of the Peaceful Warrior, he talks about a question that he asked Dan, that Socrates asks Dan. Maybe I'll put a link to the book too. It's a great book. It holds up pretty well, actually. But anyway, so Socrates asks Dan these questions, and he asks him, where are you? And Dan is like, I'm at a gas station. And Socrates, no, where are you? And finally, Dan figures out and says, here. And then Socrates says, what time is it? And Dan looks at his watch and goes, 11:30 at night. No, what time is it? And Dan goes, now. And so those are the answers to those questions, to be sort of fully present. And so on my phone, I have a picture of the 2017 eclipse that I took. And in where the moon is sort of covering the sun, I have those two questions. Where are you? What time is it? And whenever I feel that boredom or uncertainty, I literally tap on my phone and see those questions in the eclipse, because the eclipse doesn't last very long. It lasted 1 minute and 47 seconds, the 2017 eclipse. And so I asked myself that question, where are you? Here. What time is it? Now. And there's another moment in the book where Socrates tells Dan he has to go, and I don't want to see you again until you can bring me something true. Bring me a truth. And Dan has all of these little things, and Socrates keeps sending him away because they're and they're fluttering. They're flitterings. They're not true. They're not real. And finally, Dan walks in, and Socrates goes, yeah? And Dan goes, there are no ordinary moments. And Socrates goes, yeah, that's the truth. And so if there are no ordinary moments, how are we ever bored? Isn't that an interesting thing to ask? So the question of what part of you doesn't want to be here now is another question to ask, because it's honest. It's also kind, and it can lead you towards some real awareness instead of those surface level distractions. So the next question becomes, how do you sit with discomfort without letting it overwhelm you? And here's the part, you know me, I'm going to talk about breath, literally. If you are used to constant input, music, talking, movement, your phone, something, then sitting still can actually feel really loud, and it's normal. But sitting with that discomfort, even for a few minutes a day, is a super powerful practice. So here's how to begin. Okay, I'm going to give you a 5-minute sit practice. You set a timer for 5 minutes, not any more than that, not any less than that, just 5 minutes. Find a quiet spot. And you don't need total silence, just less noise than usual. And sit down comfortably. And you don't need to sit in lotus position. You don't need to be doing yoga. Just relax. Relax into your body and be comfortable. And then breathe in and out slowly. And I'm not going to ask you to count your breath. I'm not going to ask you to breathe with purpose in that way. Don't breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 8 or anything like that. Just breathe. And the last thing is, I want you to notice what thoughts are popping up, what feelings are popping up. Where in your body do you feel tight or jittery or sluggish or maybe even light? Because here's the key. I don't want you to fix anything. I don't want you to label anything. I don't want you to improve anything. I don't want you to analyze anything. Just let it all be. And it's weird because if you just let it be, just go, here's where I am. At first, it might feel like nothing is happening. And that is totally okay. Because what you're doing with this exercise is not increasing your meditative practice for the rest of your life, blah, blah, blah. You're not doing that. And you know me, I love meditation, so I'm not blah, blah, blahing in any derogatory way. I just want that not to be what we're focusing on right now, because what I want you to be doing is building capacity. I want you to start learning to stay present with your whole self, not just the shiny and hyperstimulated and exciting parts. And that, my friend, is the root of mindfulness. And it's also the root of incredible creative work. So it's an interesting thing to think about. Boredom being the gateway to creative work. So I want to connect these dots. When you learn to sit with feeling bored, with that feeling of boredom, when you stop running from it, you create space. And in that space, something absolutely amazing is going to happen. Your imagination starts to breathe. I want you to think of boredom like a still pond. If you throw stones into it, distractions, notifications, tons of noise, you never see the surface clearly. But if you let it settle, you see through. You get clarity. Some of the greatest ideas in history weren't born in chaos. They came in the shower, or on a walk, or in the car, or while staring at a ceiling tile. I mean, that's some of the stuff that Steve Jobs came out with. He didn't do because he was actively going for it. Some of the stuff he came out with came to him in the shower. My best song, Sunwarmed, the chorus for it came to me in the shower, full formed. I was watching. I had a window in the bathroom at the time, and I was watching the sun hit the little droplets of steam, and they formed a rainbow. And I went, oh. And that is what started the song. And I started singing it, and it was really funny because I started singing the chorus and singing and singing, and I didn't want to forget it. So I just kept singing it while I finished showering and didn't even bother drying myself. I ran to my recording equipment and just sang. I sang the chorus into it, saved the file, and then ran back into the bathroom and dried myself off, right? So in those moments where you're doing nothing is when there's space for something really amazing and creative to happen. And your brain needs space. Your subconscious needs space. Your mind needs space. And sometimes even boredom. True boredom, not avoidance. That's the thing. And true boredom, when you're open, it's one of the few places where that space still exists. So instead of running from it, what if you turned toward it? What if boredom became your creative cue? And here's something else that I want you to try. I want you to start naming and noticing. So I'm going to give you a challenge. It's a daily practice. I want you to sit, notice, and name. What I mean by that is, if you can, 5 minutes every day in the middle of your lunch hour, if you get a half an hour, try doing this for 5 minutes and take a 25-minute lunch if you can. I understand not all of us have time in the day. But for a week, try it. I want you to take 5 minutes every day to sit quietly, no distractions, and then ask yourself, what am I feeling? And after that 5 minutes, I want you to write a single sentence. Today, my discomfort felt like, and then fill in that blank. And that's it. I don't want you to do anything else. Just write the one sentence. No pressure to write anything brilliant, nothing like that. What I want you to do is build your awareness, right? Build a habit of becoming aware. And that awareness of where your mind goes, of what you're resisting, and what you're learning is the soil where your creativity can take root. And you know me, I love soil science. So think of it as a seed waiting to break free from its shell. And I've talked about this on the show many times before. It's not a simple process. In fact, it can be an arduous one for a seed to break through the shell to then become eventually a great tree or a beautiful flower plant. So I want you to start thinking about it in these terms, giving yourself permission to feel the discomfort and see what it's telling you. See what naming it does for you. And here's my final thought on this. I think we live in a culture that tells us to avoid discomfort, no matter what. But I don't think discomfort is the enemy. I think discomfort is a message. It's your mind and your body and perhaps even your spirit saying, hey, something's happening here. Pay attention. So the next time you feel bored, don't just start scrolling. Don't go past it. Sit with it. Ask what it's trying to tell you. And more importantly, listen. Because your creative mind, it speaks in stillness. I want to thank you so much for being here. And if you have questions about this, if you want to do a discovery call and see how to go through this and how to start creating with it, I'll put the little link to book a discovery call with me in the show notes. Because if it gave you something to think about, I'd love it if you'd shared it. And if you want to bring presence, creativity, and communication tools like these into your workplace or your organization, I'd love it if you'd get in touch, because I want us to be creating powerful, powerful ways and methods to create, to be our authentic selves, and to bring mindfulness and creativity into everything we do. Until next time, this is Izolda Trachtenberg for the Your Creative Mind podcast, reminding you as always to be curious, to be creative, and to most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Izolda Trachtenberg and is copyright 2025. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope.